It's the real news. I'm Aaron Mate. The convictions Tuesday of Paul Manafort and Michael Cohen have fueled speculation that these two men may have something to offer Robert Mueller in his investigation of President Trump and his alleged ties to alleged Russian meddling. Well, if so, and that's a very big if, Cohen and Manafort would add to the list of people who Donald Trump has to worry about. Another is possibly former CIA Director John Brennan. Brennan is called Trump treasonous and guilty of high crimes and misdemeanors because Trump resisted endorsing U.S. intelligence claims about Russian meddling. Trump responded last week by revoking Brennan's security clearance. Brennan then responded by calling Trump drunk on power.
The fact that he's using a security clearance of a former CIA director as a pawn in his public relations strategy, I think is just so reflective of somebody who, quite frankly, I don't want to use this term maybe, but he's drunk on power. He really is. And I think he's abusing the powers of that office. I think right now this country is in a crisis in terms of what Mr. Trump has done and is liable to do.
Joining me is John Kiriakou. He is a former CIA analyst who went to prison for exposing the CIA's torture program. He is also a best-selling author and co-host of the podcast and radio show Loud and Clear. Welcome, John Kiriakou. Where do you stand on this Trump-Brennan feud? Trump criticized for politicizing the issue of security clearances, but I also know that you are not personally a big fan of Brennan or a big believer in his personal integrity.
No, I have never been. John and I go back almost 30 years. I worked for him several different times while I was at the CIA, and I can tell you that John really is the consummate overachiever. He made a couple of really smart, perhaps lucky political moves, and so he has succeeded beyond even his own wildest dreams. John throws around the word treason or treasonous quite often. Treason is actually defined in the Constitution. It's providing aid and comfort to the enemy at a time of war. Treason is a death penalty charge. Everyone in American history who has been charged with treason has been sentenced to death. About half of those executions have been carried out. So what John is saying is that the President of the United States ought to be executed. Now, we've seen no evidence yet of Russian collusion or of the Trump campaign's collusion with the Russian government. All we have is John Brennan and the likes of John Brennan telling us to take his word for it, because if we had seen what he's seen, we would know. Well, you know what? John Brennan also told us that there was no torture program. He lied about that. John Brennan told us that there was no extraordinary rendition program. He lied about that. He told us there was no system of secret prisons. That was a lie. He told us that he hadn't ordered CIA officers to hack into the Senate Intelligence Committee's computers. That was a lie. But on this, he's telling us to take his word for it. But why in the world would we take his word for it if everything else that the man has said has been a lie? Let me say one other thing about John Brennan. John makes it crystal clear to anyone who will listen in Washington that the reason he is so out there against Donald Trump is that he desperately wants to be Secretary of Defense in the next Democratic administration. John's not a lawyer, he's not a lobbyist, and so he has to remain relevant. And the way that he has seen to keep himself relevant is to go on CNN and to go on MSNBC and to make these outrageous accusations just so that he continually gets press coverage. That's what he's done, and it's begun to backfire on him.
Yeah, and this is the problem where, in a bid to take down Trump for, reasons that I think you and I could sympathize with, because we don't share Donald Trump's politics, obviously. But in a bid to do that, it means that many liberals will endorse anybody who is challenging him, including someone like John Brennan, who might not necessarily be going after Trump for the same reasons that the rest of us have, because we actually oppose his policies. As you just indicated, for Brennan to attack Trump for abuse of power is ironic, given the short list you gave there of Brennan's record, including spying on the Senate when they were trying to expose his torture program, his agency's torture program, and then lying about it. And also, John, I want to play a few more clips of John Brennan, because it's also interesting. He's since, after saying this thing about treason, he's walked that back, and he's also indicated that he doesn't even have any evidence of this conspiracy that he seems so confident of. So first, let's go to John Brennan. Again, I'm speaking to Rachel Maddow, where he actually told her that he doesn't actually mean what he said about Trump committing treason.
For the President of the United States to continue to prevaricate on this issue, I think does a great injustice and a disservice to the men and women of the intelligence law enforcement community, and does a great disservice to the citizens of the United States. And that's why I said it was nothing short of treasonous. I didn't mean that he committed treason, but it was a term that I used, nothing short of treasonous.
Well, you didn't mean that he committed treason, though.
I said it's nothing short of treasonous. That was the term that I used, yeah.
That's the, if we diagram the sentence, nothing short of treasonous means it's treason.
So that's John Brennan saying he did not mean to say that Trump committed treason, essentially walking back the comments that got retweeted a million times and gotten a lot of attention when he, again, the former CIA director called the sitting president treasonous. And then in the same interview, Brennan also spoke about what he knows about alleged Trump-Russia collusion, which he admitted is basically nothing more than what has been reported in the media.
There is collusion, I think, in open sight now because of so many things I've learned since I left office, because of what has appeared in the press. You know, the Trump Tower meeting with Don Jr. and others. And I also, when I was CIA director, I didn't know that it was the day that Mr. Trump basically gave a public call to the Russians to find Hillary Clinton's emails, that in fact it was that same day that the GRU was actively looking for it. So there is collusion in plain sight.
So that is John Brennan speaking to Rachel Maddow. So John, there you go. We have Brennan walking back what he said about treason, and then getting a little bit testier when he's called on it by Maddow, and then saying that he actually doesn't even really know anything beyond what the rest of us have heard in the media. And he's talking about Trump Tower, which has been, analyzed elsewhere. We don't have to go into. But the point is, he seems to be making these really explosive pronouncements based on essentially nothing.
Yeah, and that's very much John. John's an alpha dog. He's always been like that. He's always been the first one to pick a fight or the first one to raise his voice. He even told Rachel Maddow in that interview that his Irish was up. And so he may have said things that he didn't actually mean. What he was referring to, of course, was what you just said, that the president committed treason. Well, he didn't really commit treason. He kind of maybe committed treason. That's just John. That's how he is. And there are others like John. Phil Mudd does the same thing. Phil Mudd has called Donald Trump a petulant child. He said that Trump needs a pacifier and a new rattle. But it's the same thing with Phil as it is with John, in that Phil's trying to get his own show on CNN, and Phil wants to be the deputy director of the FBI or the deputy director of the CIA. I mean, that's Washington. That's just the way it is. And let me say something too. I've written extensively about this. You don't have to pick a side. You have a scenario where there's no good guy. We don't have to love Donald Trump and hate the CIA or vice versa. You can not like Donald Trump and not agree with Donald Trump's policies, but then not throw your lot in with the deep state and the CIA and the FBI and the likes of John Brennan. Our democracy is broken right now. We need to take it back at the grassroots. We need to throw the bums out of Congress, and we need to elect people who are going to exercise real oversight. But we don't have to throw our lot in with either Donald Trump or John.
Well, John Kiriakou, we'll leave it there. John Kiriakou is a best-selling author, co-host of the radio show and podcast Loud and Clear, and a former CIA whistleblower. John Kiriakou, thanks very much.
My pleasure. Thanks. Take care.
And thank you for joining us on The Real News.